Isn't it just the two of us today? Why do I have to have dinner with you alone? And in such a fancy place, no less. John said, sounding exasperated. We were classmates in elementary and middle school, and we both dreamed of becoming doctors. John, the son of a doctor, used to look down on me, the youngest of three in a single-parent household, calling me poor. Honestly, I didn't want to have anything to do with him, but we accidentally met again when we were 30. He insisted we have dinner together, but he ended up arranging a group date without telling me. Nice to meet you. Thank you for booking such a lovely restaurant today. John responded with a composed face. During introductions, he bragged about his background and wealth. When it was my turn to introduce myself, he interrupted. This guy's still a college student. No, actually. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You don't need to feel intimidated by me. You are who you are, Dylan. He somehow believed I was still in college. It's one thing for him to be mistaken, but I wish he wouldn't spread that to the three women here. Plus, he kept bringing up my poverty. You need people striving for the same goals, right? But his family was so poor he couldn't even go to prep school and never became a doctor. I see, that's tough. No, it's not that. The sympathetic looks from the women made me hang my head. My name is Dylan Williams. I am the youngest of three brothers, with two older brothers 2 and 5 years older than me. My parents divorced when I was 3. I have hardly any memories of my father, who was apparently uninterested in family life and his children. My mother, Susan, said she couldn't stay in the family with him any longer. As the youngest, I was often ordered around by my two older brothers. Dylan, get the remote. Not now, I'm busy. Get it now. I would reluctantly obey, often in tears. At meals, if I ate too slowly, they would take their favorite foods from my plate. Hey, give me back my grapes. I was saving those for last. You should have eaten them faster. I would run to my mom, half crying. Hey, be nicer to your little brother. She would scold them while doing housework. She was a nurse. She was busy with work and taking care of us when she got home. I wanted her to scold my brothers more and pay more attention to me. But she didn't have the energy. Moreover, her nursing job required night shifts, and as a single mother, she took them to support us. Since leaving 3 small kids alone at night wasn't feasible, my grandmother would come over when mom worked nights. But I hated it when she went to work at night. I couldn't sleep well without her beside me. Mom, don't go. Every night shift, I would throw a fit at the door. If I don't work, we won't have food to eat. She would gently explain each time. Usually, I would give in, but one day, I couldn't bear to be apart from her. I don't want food. I just want to be with you. Don't leave me. Seeing me cry louder than usual and not letting go, she seemed to have a change of heart. Do you want to come to the hospital with me? She asked. Yes. That day, for the first time, I went with her to her work. This is my youngest son. He won't be a bother, so can he sleep in the break room? She explained the situation to her colleagues, looking apologetic. He's adorable. What's his name? Dylan. Dylan? That's a wonderful name. I was happy to be complimented on my name. My mom's colleagues, both nurses and doctors, were all kind to me. For the first time, I saw my mom working. Does she not get tired working all night? Isn't she hungry? My mom is amazing. I thought she looked so cool working hard. It wasn't just my mom. All the hospital staff working late into the night seemed so cool to me. Whenever she had a moment, mom would come to the break room and lie down with me. Even when she wasn't there. Her colleagues would take me to the bathroom in the middle of the night or stay with me until I fell asleep, so I didn't feel lonely. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor. I'll work with you, Mom. Then we can always be together. Yes, that sounds nice. I'll have to keep being a nurse until then. She smiled as she said this. Her colleagues looked at us warmly as we talked. When I started elementary school, I could no longer accompany Mom on her night shifts. To become a doctor, you need to study hard. Do well in school, and I'll work hard at my job too. My dream of becoming a doctor never faded, and I diligently attended school. In 6th grade, we each had to present our future dreams in front of the class. My dream is to become a doctor. I said this without hesitation. There was one other person who said their dream was to become a doctor. It was John. During recess, he came up to me. "Dylan, you know not just anyone can become a doctor, right?" He said in a mocking tone that irritated me. "What do you mean? The entrance exams for medical school are really tough. Plus, you have to go to college for 6 years. It costs a lot of money for prep school and all. Your family is too poor for that." "We're not poor. But Dylan, you always have hand-me-downs." "That's your brother's name on this, right?" He pointed and laughed at the names of my brothers on my gym bag and ruler. As the youngest, I indeed always used hand-me-downs. However, I was never the type to care about such things, so I had always used hand-me-downs without any issue. It was at this moment that I realized some people saw me as poor because of my hand-me-downs. I go to prep school twice a week to become a doctor. Your family can't afford that, right? You should give up. He thought he was being kind. After saying what he wanted, he left the classroom satisfied. I need to study. He was probably right, we likely couldn't afford prep school. "Mr. Smith, do I need to go to prep school to become a doctor?" I quietly asked my teacher, Mr. Smith. "If you have a strong will, you don't need prep school." He said this and printed out extra homework sheets with advanced problems for me. I fully support students who work hard towards their dreams. If you ever have questions, come to me anytime. I was fortunate to have a supportive teacher, and I improved my skills without needing prep school. Then I became a middle school student. My area was quite rural, without any integrated private middle and high schools. Some kids left home for private schools starting in middle school. But most of my elementary school classmates went to the same public middle school. John was one of them. We hadn't interacted since then, but right after entering middle school, he started picking on me. "I heard you were number 1. Just don't get cocky, it was only because I had a cold." I had ranked first in a test at the beginning of school, beating him. He was clearly upset about losing to me. His family is super poor. "That uniform is a hand-me-down from your brother, right? It's so dirty." He would interrupt my conversations with the girls in class, belittling me with jokes about my poverty. He needed to be the top student and bask in the attention. It was annoying. I tried to avoid him. When I scored higher than him, he would harass me out of spite. So, I stopped solving all the questions, even when I knew the answers. When John ranked first in the next test, he came to me, grinning. "Dylan, what rank did you get?" "8th. See, poverty makes your grades worse." I got first place easily. Poor people who can't afford prep school should just give up on being doctors and start working after high school. "I'll think about it." I realized it was wiser not to provoke him, so I answered him nonchalantly to keep him satisfied. By deliberately scoring around 8th place, he eventually stopped seeing me as a threat. He maintained his top rank and went on to a prestigious private high school in New York. I attended the local public high school. Finally, in high school, I was free from him. Years passed, and now I'm 30. "Hey, wait. Dylan, is that you?" At the airport, someone suddenly called out to me from behind. It's me, John. We were in the same class in elementary and middle school. Remember?" "Wait, what?" The John I knew was chubby and wore thick round glasses. But the John in front of me was tall, slim, and didn't wear glasses. "John? What happened to your glasses?" "Really? Almost everyone wears contacts nowadays." "Well, I guess poor people wouldn't know that. It's not about being poor, I just have good eyesight." Dealing with him is going to be a pain. Memories of the past came flooding back. Seeing me stay silent, he continued. "I'm at the Advanced Medical Center now. I'm a doctor, of course. What about you, Dylan?" "I'm at university now." "University? You're still a student at 30? Well, I guess that's what happens when you're poor." "No, it's not like that. Don't blame the world. You worked hard after high school, saved money, and finally made it to college. I respect your effort. It not that. He barely listened to me and kept sympathizing. As your senior in life, feel free to reach out anytime. Give me your contact info. No, you're probably too busy, it's fine. Don't be shy. Come on, give me your phone. He forced me to exchange contact information with him. Oh. I have a meeting at 1 p.m. I gotta go. Good luck with university. He made a show of being busy and left. I figured he would be too busy to contact me, being a doctor and all, but 2 days later, he got in touch. Dylan, do you have a part-time job this Friday evening? No, I don't. He was completely convinced I was a current university student. At this point, I lost the will to correct him. Let's grab dinner. No, I'm fine. Don't be shy. I'll treat you to something you can't afford as a student. Look forward to it. Anyway, I have a surgery now, so I'll call you later. He abruptly ended the call. Why is he bothering me again? I haven't even done anything to provoke his jealousy this time. But if I refuse his invitation, it will probably become more troublesome. I just want him to lose interest in me without causing a fuss. I thought of various excuses to cancel the plan, but none seemed likely to work with him. Friday came quickly, and I reluctantly headed to the designated restaurant. I gasped when I saw the place. It was a fancy French restaurant. John had told me, just don't wear jeans, so I was dressed in chinos and a button-up shirt. However, everyone entering the restaurant was dressed elegantly and stylishly. Maybe I should just leave. I thought, but then I heard his voice. You're early. I turned around to see John in a stylish checkered suit with perfectly styled hair. I'm a bit underdressed. I'll go change. You go on ahead. You don't have any fancy clothes, right? I'm not that mean. He handed me a paper bag. Inside was a complete suit and leather shoes. Here, take this and change. I can't accept something so expensive. Just take it, poor university student. Besides, it's to save me the embarrassment of being seen with you. Hurry up before they arrive. Go change. He pointed to the restroom at a nearby station. Wait, aren't we supposed to have dinner just the two of us? It seemed like he had invited others, but I had no chance to ask. I didn't like owing him a favor, but I had no choice but to comply. Even a fool looks presentable in a good suit. John smirked as he saw me in the new clothes and swiftly entered the restaurant. I hurried after him. The table we were shown had 6 sets of forks and knives. Isn't it just the two of us today? Why do I have to have dinner with you alone? And in such a fancy place, no less. He said, sounding exasperated. You were the one who invited me. I didn't even want to come. I resisted inwardly. Then, the staff brought 3 women to our table. Nice to meet you. Thank you for booking such a lovely restaurant today. The 3 women who arrived were young and beautiful. Is this a group date? John straightened up, clearly trying to impress the women. He didn't tell me. When I looked at him, he briefly made eye contact with me but quickly looked away. I sighed deeply in my heart. I struggle with meeting new people. Especially young, lively, and noisy ones. While my mood plummeted, he beamed at the women. Thanks for coming. Sorry, one person couldn't make it because of an emergency patient. He apologized dramatically, placing his hand on his chest. Don't apologize. Saving lives is our duty. We sat down, ordered food, and began introducing ourselves. I heard they are all 26-year-old nurses. Their names are Emily, Sarah, and Emma. Apparently, they were college classmates. They are in their 4th year as working professionals. Despite my initial impression, they were well-mannered and understood the appropriate behavior for the situation. Likely due to their professional experience. Next, it was our turn to introduce ourselves. John eagerly started. I'm 30 and work at the Advanced Medical Center. My specialty is cardiac surgery. The Advanced Medical Center? That's where only the best go. Amazing. The women praised him, and he basked in it, continuing his boastful stories. His father was also a doctor who founded a cardiovascular hospital, and he planned to take over the family practice someday. Despite being smart since childhood, he stayed in the local middle school to keep his mother from feeling lonely. For high school, he attended a prestigious private school in New York, where he topped his class. He then got into a famous private university, the university, on his first try. The university has very high tuition, right? And the donation fees are enormous. They murmured in amazement. I, too, was hearing about his high school and university for the first time and was surprised. John was genuinely a rich kid. No wonder he never understood me at all. My parents spared no expense for their kids. I'm very grateful to them. That's why I want to take over the hospital soon and repay them. That's wonderful. They looked at him with eyes full of admiration. I was inwardly exasperated at him playing the role of the dutiful son. Is this how men charm women? I wondered if they could see his true nature. I was completely a spectator. As I observed the four of them to pass the time, suddenly the conversation turned to me. Dylan, do you also work at the Advanced Medical Center? No, I'm at university. He's still a university student. No, I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Don't feel intimidated by me. You are who you are, Dylan. I thought I had a chance to clear up the misunderstanding, but he didn't listen at all. He was acting like a supportive friend. We went to the same elementary and middle school. He also wanted to become a doctor, so I gave him a lot of advice. Oh, you were close friends. You need someone to strive towards the same goal with, right? But his family was poor. So he couldn't go to prep school and eventually didn't become a doctor. I see. No, that's not at all. The sympathetic looks from the women were painful, and I hung my head. Dylan, where are you from? North Dakota. It's a really rural place. He used to bike 6 miles to middle school every day. I got driven every day, though. Even though Emma asked me, John answered for me. What does your mom do for work? She asked me again. She's a nurse, right? You used to say you wanted to become a doctor and work with her when you were a kid. If only you had a bit more financial support like I did, you could have made that dream come true. It's a shame. John always managed to bring up my poverty to contrast it with his wealth. After a few drinks, he got even more vocal about my poverty. He started sharing more about my hand-me-down gym clothes and uniforms, how I always went for the leftovers at school lunch. And even how today's outfit was entirely prepared by him. The three women seemed like kind people. They looked unsure how to react to my poverty story. Especially Emma, who was glaring at John with what seemed like anger for belittling me. But he didn't notice their reactions at all. It's nice that you could reunite with such a wonderful friend. Emily finally uttered some non-committal words. But it was those words that made me finally realize. To John, I was just there to make him look better. Realizing this made me furious, but if he was going to call me poor, then I'd fully embrace it. Since this meal was on him, I'd eat as much as I could. I decided to order some expensive wine too. I silently kept eating. I realized it was a 4-against-1 situation. I didn't know what they thought of John, but as nurses, they were adept at keeping the doctor happy. He remained in a good mood throughout. They chatted without involving me, but Emma occasionally glanced at me. Wow, those mussels were delicious. I might order 2 more plates. I muttered as I came out of the restroom and saw Emma walking towards me. Are you from Fargo, North Dakota? How did you know? Have you lived there? Just a little bit when I was young. Dylan. Yes? Is your mom still a nurse? Yes, she is. She's quite a veteran nurse now. I joked, but she didn't laugh. That's a lovely name. Her words triggered a memory. I suddenly recalled following my mom to her night shifts. Do you know my mom? Not your mom. I remember you. She remembered me? What did she mean? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember a girl like Emma. Seeing me puzzled, she smiled. My mom is a nurse too, and she worked with your mom. I used to follow my mom to her night shifts. Ah. A faint memory of a little girl came to mind. I was 6 years old then. I was used to following my mom to her night shifts, thinking about whose portrait I'd draw that day. And when I got to the hospital, there was a little girl sitting in my usual spot. Were you the girl I slept next to? Yes. Since Emma and I are 4 years apart, she was 2 years old at the time. That day, her father couldn't come home no matter what. Even so, her mother couldn't take a day off work because they were short-staffed. So, she reluctantly brought Emma to her night shift. Dylan, be Emma's big brother today, okay? As the youngest, I'd always been around older people, so this was my first time taking care of someone 4 years younger than me. What makes a 2-year-old happy, anyway? I poked the little girl's cheeks and tickled her feet, trying to gauge her reactions. Meanwhile, she tore my precious picture book and ruined the drawings I made for her within seconds. But I never got angry. I didn't feel even a shred of anger. Having a little sister is so cute. A girl smaller than me smiled, showing her tiny teeth. It made me feel incredibly happy. Look at this. Emma held out her phone. It showed a picture of little me and little Emma sleeping with our cheeks pressed together. On that day, you put me to sleep. It was the only time I went with my mom to her night shift, but I always wanted to meet you again. I was impressed that she remembered such things from when she was 2 years old. Probably because I was really happy that you played Big Brother for me that day. I was genuinely happy when she said that. Coincidences are amazing, I murmured, but she shook her head. It wasn't a coincidence. I became a nurse because I wanted to meet you, Dylan. What? I was shocked by her words. She moved from North Dakota before she started elementary school, but she could never forget me, even though we only met for one day. When she started school and could articulate her feelings, Emma told her mother about me. Then, her mother said, Dylan is going to be a doctor in the future, so if you work in a hospital, you might meet him. Your mom's amazing. Psychic powers? She said you declared it in front of everyone. You said if you became a doctor and worked with your mom, you'd always be together. Back then, I just wanted to be with my mom. I remember her tearing up a bit when she heard my words. At the time, I wondered why she was crying, but now that I'm older, I understand how happy she must have been. Suddenly, I noticed Emma staring at me. Dylan, you're a doctor, right? Her tone was more serious than before, and I felt a bit puzzled, but it wasn't something I was hiding. It was just that John had introduced me inaccurately. I honestly shared my background. As her mother said, I kept aiming to become a doctor, fulfilling my childhood promise to my mother. I was aware that our family wasn't as wealthy as John's. And life in the Williams household with a single mother and 3 siblings was tough at times. But my mom always smiled and raised us well. Wanting to repay her quickly, I studied hard. I entered a local public high school as a scholarship student. I went to a national university with a scholarship, worked part-time, and managed to pass the national exam. I proudly earned my medical license. Assistant Professor Williams, do you enjoy your research? I smiled and nodded at her words. It seemed she had figured everything out. I originally aimed to work with my mother in a hospital, but at some point, I became interested in research. I want to save even more people than I do now. To do that, I need to develop new drugs. After graduating from college, I became a graduate student and immersed myself in research. Fortunately, my thesis gained attention, and I managed to complete a 4-year program in 3 years. I stayed at the university and, as luck would have it, a position as an assistant professor opened up, and I became one this year. Why are you deceiving John? He still thinks you're a college student, doesn't he? She asked, puzzled. You might not believe this, but... I explained that he had always teased me about being poor, and when we reconnected recently after 15 years, he still mocked me for being poor and mistakenly thought I was a college student. He was pretending to be a gentleman, she said, looking thoroughly exasperated. Let's go. She linked her arm with mine and pulled me back to our seats. Emma, thanks for keeping Dylan company. John smiled at Emma, but she ignored him and spoke to the 2 women. Dylan is a doctor and an assistant professor at a university. He's researching Alzheimer's. Emily and Sarah turned to look at me in surprise. Now that you mention it, I think I've seen your face somewhere before. Weren't you in the newspaper recently? Something about collaborating with a British company on research. Sarah was right, our lab was working on a joint research project with a famous British pharmaceutical company. Thank you for reading that small article in the local paper. The three of them exchanged glances and laughed. We work in neurosurgery at different hospitals. So, we were all very interested in the Alzheimer's article. We have to keep studying. Even though we can't compare to doctors. Emily and Sarah nodded behind Emma. I was genuinely impressed by how capable they were. By the way, when I saw your name in that article, I had a hunch. Emma said with a mischievous smile. I see, that's how she knew I was an assistant professor. Dylan Williams. It seemed that my name had brought us together. I felt grateful to my parents for giving me such a wonderful name. Meanwhile, John stood behind us, so shocked he couldn't speak, his eyes wide. You are a doctor? And an assistant professor at 30? You must be joking. He turned red with anger. Why don't you believe he is a doctor? Because he was poor and couldn't afford cram school. How could someone like that get into medical school? He never complained about being poor. He accepted his circumstances and fulfilled his dream. You don't need cram school or a lot of money to achieve your dreams. John, you might not have had money problems thanks to your parents. But your heart is poorer than anyone else's. Emma told John he had a poor heart, and he was left speechless, looking down. Always wealthy and now a doctor, he had been pampered and flattered by those around him, but her words seemed to have struck a nerve. Let's call it a night, we have work tomorrow. Emily broke the tense atmosphere. John quickly disappeared somewhere. Maybe he went to the bathroom? I had been planning to let him pay for the meal since he intended to use me as a foil. But under these circumstances, I felt reluctant. Even though it wasn't my fault, I decided to split the bill with him this time. Isn't John taking too long? I asked a staff member, as he hadn't returned even after a long wait. They told me he had left about 10 minutes ago. And he had already paid the bill. Did I go too far? Emma seemed to be concerned about him. I think your words are definitely reaching him. John isn't really a bad guy from the start. He's just been a bit spoiled. Even though he had money, he worked hard to become a doctor. We all know that becoming a doctor isn't easy. Let's both do our best. With that, I parted ways with them. 3 months flew by. I hadn't exchanged contact information with Emma, so I hadn't been in touch with any of them, including John, during those 3 months. Dr. Williams, you have a visitor. One day, John showed up at my lab. I invited him in. You really are an associate professor. His eyes had completely changed as he looked at me. I'm really sorry for everything. He suddenly apologized. Emma called me emotionally poor, and it made me realize a lot. I've sometimes had trouble getting along with my colleagues at work. And I realized it was my problem. She was worried about you too. You should contact her. Dylan, can we redo that mixer? What? This time, let's do it at a top-notch restaurant. No. That's not the point. I was once again exasperated by John, who thought money was the solution. I just want to treat everyone to something nice. It makes people happy. Well, that's true, but he had definitely changed over these 3 months. He chose a restaurant thinking about the people he'd be dining with. There was no trace of the old John who used to flaunt his wealth. So, we decided to have another mixer with the same group. The event was lively with conversations only colleagues could have. John now saw me as an equal doctor and listened attentively to the 3 nurses. John, what do you think of this analysis? Before I knew it, we had become close enough to consult each other about work. John might get an urgent call, so no alcohol for him. Today, the 5 of us were gathered at John's house. Come on, let's make a toast. Good job today. Cheers. Beer cans clinking with friends were better than wine at a fancy restaurant. We had become irreplaceable friends. So, Dylan, did you tell Emma how you feel? She'll hear. I'll tell her soon. I'll let you know how it goes. The truth is, Emma and I aren't officially dating yet, but we do meet up occasionally. It made me really happy to know that she had been thinking about me since she was 2. Meeting Emma again after becoming a doctor feels like a miracle. I want to cherish this miracle. Here's a good luck charm. What, a love charm? Come on, go for it. I never imagined receiving a love charm from a friend at 30, just before telling someone how I felt. John, you're still a bit off. I chuckled. But I understood that he was thinking about me in his own way. All right. I have to give my all too. I made up my mind.